So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Fraser Lake Fish Pass. And I just want to be up front. This is not a Kodiak Regional Aquaculture Association project. This is an Alaska Department of Fish and Game project. It was built and it is operated by the department. Periodically, we will provide funding for it if there's a funding shortage, and we will, time to time, provide a staff person to help out. But we do not really operate this or have any ownership in it, so I just want to give the department their credit on that. Fish passes in Kodiak, they have a long history, dating all the way back to the 50s. The then territory of Alaska was working on ways to develop cheap ways, relatively cheap ways, to get fish into lakes where we didn't really have particularly sockeye salmon occurring, and there are several locations on Kodiak and Afognak Island where that occurs. We have lots of barriered lakes that would provide good rearing habitat for sockeye salmon, but there's just no way for the fish to get there. So they started developing what we call an Alaska Steep Pass, and they're relatively easy to build. They're pretty accommodating to remote areas, and we have lots of remote areas, particularly on Kodiak and Afognak. And so these are some of the sites where those fish passes exist today. Little Katoy Lake was one of the first ones they put in, and the hatchery folks out at Katoy Bay Hatchery utilized that for getting fish into the lake for their sockeye salmon brood. Laura and Gretchen Lakes up in Halls Bay have now naturalized sockeye salmon runs, so those are no longer enhanced, they're naturalized. And then Little Waterfall Creek Fish Pass came on significantly later in the 90s. This was built primarily to open up pink salmon spawning habitat, and it was part of the Exxon Valdez oil spill money that came to help do some rehabilitation work. And so that was built, like I said, much later than these others. But the one we're going to focus on today is by far the largest producer, and that's Fraser Lake. So Fraser Lake is, here's a little zoom in of Kodiak. We're down here in the sort of the southern districts. It's kind of a meander for fish to even get back in here. They have to go through this Narrows, and then they get into through Mosier Bay and into Olga Bay. And so here's Fraser Lake here. The falls are right about here, and then we've got Dog Salmon Creek, and then eventually the fish when they're coming out here and then up this way. Point out, Olga Lakes are also a large producer, natural producer of salmon in this area. Akalura is a small producer, was pretty big at one time, but it's kind of tapered off. So most of the management for this area is dependent on Fraser Lake. Here's just some stats on the lake. It's a long, narrow lake. It's really deep, and it's got quite a volume as far as rearing for sockeye salmon. And so again, the outlet is about 16 kilometers from the lake to the ocean, and the waterfall is about 10 meters high. So clearly fish could not bypass that to get into the lake. Again, with the limnology, as I mentioned, of Spiridon, this is monitored from May usually through October. Water quality, zooplankton, phytoplankton is all collected here and analyzed. One thing we have seen in the recent years is zooplankton populations have been declining, and this lake was on our list for possible candidates for fertilization. So it may come up here in the future. Smolt production has been down, and the smolt condition factor or cause is right around 6, so they're pretty skinny fish coming out of there. So hopefully, we can see some rebounding in the near future, but if not, it may be something that the Aquaculture Association may be able to step in and provide some help. So enhancement at Fraser Lake started in 1951, again when Alaska was still a territory. And what began was Karluk they started taking eggs from Karluk and planting those eggs directly into some of the tributaries in Fraser Lake. later on, they went to Red Lake and started moving actual adults from Red Lake and putting them directly into Fraser Lake, and started planting fry from eggs that they took from Red Lake and took them all the way up to Cotoy Bay Hatchery. That was a state-run facility at that time, and then started transplanting those fry down, and then also still planting eggs into tributaries all along Fraser Lake. Interestingly, I found they did 1 year, they went to Ruth Lake, and I found that strange, and I couldn't really find a lot of information on how they did that, but Ruth Lake is a barriered lake that we stock today, and there was a fish ladder there. There is no longer one. So I imagine, again, that was probably a lake that they were stocking at that time. This was the late 50s, early 60s, but I couldn't find where that stock had come from initially, so it can't be a native Ruth Lake stock, but indeed they did plant some fry and about 2 million eggs from Ruth Lake. So here's the fish pass itself. This was taken several years ago, so it's not a real recent picture. But the fish pass is about 64 meters long. The falls here, like I said, is about 10 meters. And there's a series of them here. And what they'd done originally when they built them in 1961 was they wanted to try to see which was the best design. Now, steep passes come in several different designs, and the ones they were focusing on were what they call Type A and Type C. And we'll see some pictures of these in a little bit from the inside. But effectively, what you've got in these long, straight runs are baffles or fins that point upstream, so when the water, or point downstream, so when the water comes in, it fills and it creates all these eddies, and it creates a nice little, almost propulsion for the fish to shoot up. And so it's a lot different than, say, jump pools or some of the larger ladders you see with chutes where they can kind of move from one to the other. This is just a straight, you just swim straight up. And so they had to put a few resting pools in here because they can't, make the whole traverse in one straight shot. What they found was the sockeye salmon preferred Type A, and pinks actually preferred the Type C. So what they did was went to complete Type A's here, and really the biggest difference that I could find in those is Type A, the fins are going straight up and down, and C, they put them at like a 12-degree angle. And that just changes the fluid dynamics, I guess, of the water coming down, and the pinks were able to shoot up a lot better than when they have the A's. Also, they found, kind of interesting, is pinks tended to just go all the way up. They would go all the way, and sockeye would tend to loiter in the pools a lot longer. They had to rest. So what I wanted to show you guys here, I found this on YouTube. It's pretty cool. It was called a program, I guess, back in the 70s called The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. And he came to Fraser Lake to film a documentary on fish traveling up Fraser River, going up the fish ladder, and then on to spawn, and the tragedy that they ensued in death after spawning. But they really have a great shot of how they used to operate this thing back in the 70s as opposed to what we do today. And this is a screenshot, and the next slide will be a movie. Hopefully we can get to that clip. But you can see sockeye ascending, and the fin in the middle, and then those baffles that come up, and so the water is going down, and he's shooting up the chute there. So we'll see if we can get this out. It's going to start off probably at the beginning with a bunch of flies bugging this guy, and Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone, he does the narration. It's pretty cool. So we'll see if I can get it. I'm going to get to like 2050. Yeah, that's what it's like in Alaska in the summer.
Calypso has come to these northern waters to observe and record for the first time in history. It's the lake, but fish ladders are rarely totally successful.
Yeah, that'll work.
To provide a gradual ascent, The ladder was set back on one side of the falls, making it difficult for the salmon to find the entrance.
So again, this is 70, so it's still fairly new.
The Calypso team helps officials of the Alaskan Department of Fish and Game as they draw nets of confused homing salmon toward the entrance of the step pass. If the return is delayed too long, they will die here without fulfilling their purpose.
So at that point, there was no diversion weir, so the fish would always go up to the fall, so they had to scoop them up and get them over to the opening.
The journey up the ladder will be a very tough one against a formidable current.
How alien this metal bugs must be. The fact that fish can accept this totally unnatural environment shows the strength of their drive to return.
So yeah, you can see them shooting right up.
But still they go on because they sense that this is the only path to reach their goal.
There they are in the rest.
Along the sunlight is a stray pink salmon, recognizable by the hump on his back. He's come home with their own salmon.
Back he goes.
After the difficult ascent, free from the ladder and from the falls. And now the magisterial procession upstream.
They go. So there you go. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And so once they get up, they have a little resting channel that they can kind of take hold in and not get washed back over. So here's a more modern shot of the facility really that's built out there. You can see here now that following that in the mid-70s, they built a diversion weir for the fish to come into so they wouldn't go up to the falls. They didn't have to have a huge crew out there that would have to seine them and get them here over to the mouth of the ladder. Like I said, a pretty nice facility out here. They've got a little counting station here, so when the fish come up, that's where they're enumerated. This you can see a little bit of their water diversion weir. But again, as the years went by, everything sort of started to degrade again, and so in 2003, everything got a bit of an upgrade. They did a lot of rework on the concrete. The resting pools are concrete, and improved the weir again, and did some improvements to the diversion weir. That was 2003, so fast forward to just a few years ago, the department got quite a bit of money to upgrade the Laurel Lake Fish Pass that I talked about a little bit earlier, as well as Fraser. You can see here they have, again, redone the diversion weir, so that's all brand new. And then they built this down at the mouth of the ladder, so where the fish come into. The diffuser there is designed to help attract fish better, and you can see it's pretty robust. We have a lot of bears in the area. I've got some pictures later to show you how people go there to bear view. But now, as fish are trying to ascend the ladder, they can kind of aggregate there at the bottom in that cage and be safe from bears. One of the other things they did to upgrade was install this pipe. It has two functions. It helps divert some water to the diffuser, and then it also was going to aid with smolt migration. They would do a smolt count there, but they wouldn't do a 100% count. They would do a sub count where they would, and maybe you're familiar with the mark recapture method, where you catch a little small population, you die, gold with Bismarck brown, die. Release them again, and you catch them in another downstream trap, and you can sort of extrapolate what your trap efficiency is and get your smolt migration count that way. What they wanted to do was a similar system to what we have in Spirited, so they could capture 100%, do 100% census, and then send them down this tube, and then onward out to the ocean. When they got it, when Fishing Game finished this project, they tested it, it was going to work. The department went through some funding cuts and cut the smoke program. So we haven't actually gotten any data from this. They haven't been able to do it. So we're hoping in the future, when funding does come available, they'll be able to operate this again, because the smolt information is pretty important when you want to assess the health of a rearing environment. And so without that smolt data, it's going to be tough to see how fish are doing while they're in the lake. So again, a different view from the side here, from a different angle in the winter. Diversion weir. And what I wanted to show on this one here was, you can see there are two sets of ladders in tandem. So there's 2 here and 2 here. So there's really 4 there. And one of these was built again in the late 70s, after the original one was built. They had problems operating it, and found really trying to operate all of them at once, you weren't getting enough flow down one or the other. So that was abandoned, and really the one that's operated mostly is the original one from 1960s that they've discontinued to upgrade and rebuild. So bottom line, what we've got here is the amount of fish that have escaped since 1983. And we picked 83 because that's when they installed a weir on Dog Salmon Creek to get a better assessment of fish entering the system for management purposes. The ladders are well up the creek, and so by the time you could get any escapement data, you were well behind the curve on trying to manage the fishery. So the management of the fishery actually takes place through escapement of the weir and not necessarily escapement of the lake. And they can get data on how many fish are left at the end of the season in between the weir and the lake, and then sort of get a pattern on how that is extrapolated out and manage the fishery that way, to try to get the amount of fish they want into the lake versus the amount of fish left over for harvest. But you can see, very successful project. Almost 9 million fish have been harvested between 83 and 2013, and roughly 280,000 a year. And getting about 171,000 fish for escapement on an annual basis. So no longer enhancement activities going on here. The creek the system is considered a naturalized system, so it's technically a wild system now, and really very successful. Minimal amount of staff to operate it on an annual basis. They have 2 folks basically down there operating the fish ladder. When they were doing smolt, we'd have maybe a third for the smolt project. So it operates roughly from May to the end of August. And there you go, there's your bear viewing picture. The bears, you bring in the salmon, you're gonna bring in the bears. So it's a very popular spot for bear viewing. That's all I've got. Any questions?